Hello, everyone. Welcome into Stuck in the Catch Fence. We are live here for the post-race recap. Doing it later than typical because I was at the Martinsville paperclip as I witnessed Kyle Larson come out of nowhere and come away with a victory, his first ever victory at Martinsville, Virginia, the first time he was able to add a grandfather clock to his trophy case. Joe, I'm sure it was a day full of high and lows for you at home because Kyle Larson kind of didn't show the speed. Well, a lot of drivers didn't really show a whole lot of speed because passing was very difficult. But at the end of the day, Young Money comes away with a grandfather clock. How was it for you being at home?
Well, Ryan, you were at the damn race the entire weekend. Got the Xfinity race, got the Cup race, and I'm sure at the track that was an exciting race. But due to Fox's terrible coverage, probably the worst coverage of the year, I told you this before we went live. That race did nothing but give me anxiety, and I'll tell you why. Because there were several times when leaders were battling for the lead, whether it be Kyle Larson with Chase Briscoe, with a couple different leaders there. I'm having a brain freeze off the top of my head, but all Fox would show is bumpers of cars. You couldn't see the pack racing in the middle of the pack when they would go to it. There was good pack racing, it looked like, on TV. And I think I actually sent you a text one time and said, man, I bet I'm missing a heck of a race. So just terrible Fox coverage. I'm glad Kyle Larson came out with the win. Of course, I'm a Kyle Larson guy, but besides that, I thought it was a terrible Fox's coverage was just terrible and really led you not to be able to enjoy the race. And once again, it seems like every caution, the very few that they did have yesterday during the race, Fox happened to be on commercial when those things happen. So it's kind of summing it up from how I seen it at home, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, outside of the coverage, the racing itself, did you enjoy it? I know last year Martinsville in the spring race was probably the worst Martinsville race we've ever had.
Yeah.
The fall race was a little bit better. I don't know if it was considered good.
Well,
And then we had what we had yesterday. So how was your overall enjoyment of the race itself?
Well, I don't agree with Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin said it was worse than last year after the race, which I don't think it was. I think it was a better quality race in the spring race last year. Of course, we got a lot of excitement at Martinsville in the fall race, obviously, but I think it was better than it was last year. In my opinion, I'm going to have to go with better race. Still not typical of what you expect to see out of Martinsville, at least from a fan watching at home through the TV. Of course, you being down there, you got to see all the middle of the pack racing. You got to see what was going on around the track. Watching at home, all I got to see is two cars bumpers. Having said that, what we have 3 different leaders in that race. To somebody observing that race at home, it would probably look like a boring race. I was trying to follow everything I could, and I was really actually following Joey Logano through that race because an incredible race strategy paid off from him, coming from 36 to finish second. And it was kind of fun to watch him just move up the pack all day and really kind of hold in there and end up with the second place finish. Not that I'm a Joey Logano fan at all, but that was fun to watch. But outside of that, yeah, I mean, if you're just a casual, typical NASCAR fan sitting at home, that was probably a pretty boring race to watch on TV.
Well, Jeff Gluck, he did his poll today, and 32% of people said it was a good race. So the viewing public astronomically voted that that was not a good race. I will say this, and we've prefaced this every single time. If you go to a race, you're going to have fun. I mean, the only race I've ever went to and did not have fun was last year's Indy 500, and that's because there was 3 less passes for the lead than there were in this race. We had 3 passes for the lead on green flag, outside of cautions and things of that nature. There's only 10 lead changes the entire 400 laps. And if you see the thumbnail, it does say NASCAR has killed or is killing short track racing. And, we had some positive news after Richmond. And now looking at Richmond, I think I'm ready to say that it's an anomaly. Richmond's 3/4 of a track. That's its own thing. We did have tire fall off at Richmond, so that's a big deal. But Joe, I have never in my entire life, especially at a concrete track, in the corners like Martinsville, seen people take no tires and literally last for 80 laps. And, that's a problem. That's not something that is going to help with short track racing. There were no comers and goers. I mean, Ryan Priest, not only did he lead, the first stage, he led the first like 135 laps. And when it comes to trying to view a product or something like that, and then he has a pit road penalty for speeding, and you never heard of him the entire day because it was almost impossible to pass in the back. And if it wasn't for Joey Logano, Martin Truex, and a few others getting a timely caution and going on a different pit strategy, we would have had 2 less passes for the lead under green flag laps, and Martinsville has a high bar that it sets when it comes to our entertainment. And yes, we did have Hale Mellon last year, and that's what everybody will remember that race by. But the Martinsville that we're typically used to seeing, where you're bumping people and getting them out of the way, they come back racing you on the outside, then they see your bumper, they hit you. It was a bump and then gone more
Right.
often than not. And unfortunately, Joe, with these cars, we have seen now when it comes to the short tracks that the Xfinity Series puts on a way better race than the new next gen car does. And that's because the Xfinity Series doesn't have to shift all the time like these new cars do. You're not allowed to mess with gear ratios. I think the truck race, they had a tire fall off after like 20 laps. It was like a second and a half. It took 80 laps before tires started to fall off. And I know Goodyear, we went all over their ass about building a quality tire last year. But we said that there's a difference between building a tire that doesn't blow up, because that's what was happening last year. Nobody cares if the tire falls off. That leads to good short track racing, good racing in general, more often than not, having to find a groove, comers and goers, things of that nature, like what we saw at Richmond. But this track, they had bowling balls. Literally a guy took no tires, and Joey Logano, and had a 3-second lead at Martinsville Speedway
Right.
on 40 lap older tires than anybody else. And you just mix all those things together with what we're seeing now when it comes to the next gen car. And I don't know if we'll ever get short track racing back. I know that Bristol Dirt to me was really, really fun. Joe, I'm scared to death that if we had the original Bristol on pavement, we would have been talking last week how that was one of the worst races we've seen. Cause I think we would have saw the same exact thing with everybody running the same line. Nobody's able to get to one another. If you had, clean air, not only do you have an advantage, you have like a 3-second advantage. And then cars that were fast, if you made a mistake, you're done. Unless you get a lucky caution or a better pit strategy, you are done. Martin Truex Jr. could not pass Anthony Alfredo for 25 laps with these cars. There is just not enough of a difference. And, I as much as we've liked what has happened when it comes to mile and a half and road courses, I think the short tracks are almost dead.
Yeah, no, I can't disagree. And as a matter of fact, last night Kyle Larson essentially won that race on gambling, and it wasn't even a gamble. They knew he came in, took 2 tires right back out, and as a matter of fact, his pit stop was so quick, I didn't think he took tires, but he did take 2 tires, came out, restarted in the lead, and I think really that is what actually won him the race, because these teams are learning, especially on a short track. You get out in that clean air, you got the race won. Kyle Larson, the only thing that could have happened to Kyle Larson yesterday, after with 15 laps to go, as he was pulling away with a 3-second lead, the only thing that could have lost him that race was a yellow flag or him blowing a tire or losing it himself. That's the only thing that was going to cost him that race. There was nobody catching him. And we saw that all day from the leader. The leaders didn't lose. Kyle Larson was able to overtake, I believe, Chase Briscoe at the time, but that was because he hit a little bit fresher tires. But even then, I think Chase Briscoe was on, 78 or 80 laps on his tires when he was overtaken. So, yep. I think you're right. And I don't know what the answer is. I know the next gen car, this Gen 7 car, was touted as this is one car for every racetrack. Well, we've seen an improvement in the mile and a half. I think we've seen an improvement for the most part on road courses, but NASCAR's bread and butter and the foundation of NASCAR, when you're talking about short track racing, which has the biggest fan base because most people that watch NASCAR are coming from the dirt tracks on Friday and Saturday night. And then, they progress with their driver, like a Kyle Larson, like a Casey Kane, up into the NASCAR's top circuit. And people love short track racing, but you love the typical short track racing that you used to see at Martinsville and Bristol and Richmond. And I think at this point, if NASCAR doesn't figure something out to make these short track races more exciting, and maybe the answer to that is, you know what? When we go to short tracks, we're running the Gen 6 car or something similar. I don't think that'll ever happen. Don't get me wrong, but they're going to have to figure something out with these cars. The aero package at the short tracks is definitely not the answer. I think it helped out at the road courses, but I don't think it's doing anything at the short tracks.
No, I completely agree. And, I.
Oh, by the way, Truex fan 19 says hi.
Hi, Truex fan 19. The thing, Joe, that I'm just blown away by, like you mentioned, is that this was supposed to be the only good racing we got with the last gen car to the Gen 6 was short tracks. We had some decent road courses, but mainly short tracks was like, this is the closest thing we felt like to, older NASCAR. And now we're to the point that, and I want to preface it again. I had a good time. I enjoyed being there. My driver was absolutely terrible. I mean, absolutely god awful.
Bad.
Yes. I sat there and I told one of the guys I was driving home with last night, I said, I think that's the first time out of just pure competitiveness I've ever seen Kyle Busch get lapped on a green flag run. Not because he had damage, not because he hit the wall. He literally was that slow that he got lapped. And I don't think I've ever remembered seeing that in my entire life. So throw all that out. I mean, I had a great time. I would go to Martinsville again. But that being said, for you people at home, the 30% of you that enjoyed that race, I voted yes because I went, and I don't feel like I was, it's kind of hypocritical because did I enjoy myself? Yes. Did I enjoy the product that was there? Yeah. No. I mean, I'm just sitting there watching. Is anybody going to get up to the leader? Nah, he's 4 seconds ahead.
You can't.
No, you're right. And, not even lap traffic wasn't a factor because guys were just getting out of the way. I mean, they didn't even have to race them. They were just getting out of the way. And then the second place guy would catch up to Anthony Alfredo, and he couldn't get around Anthony Alfredo. I mean, it was just, NASCAR has to do something. We've had this discussion before, and the horsepower, I don't think is going to be the option. They've already mentioned it. It's been brought up. They said it'd take 12 to 18 months to get parts in. We know they want to help Rick Ware Racing and BJ McLeod's Go Fast or Live Fast Racing. They want to do things to make them more competitive. Competitive to stay last? Sure. But that's not going to be an option. So you have to go back to what Denny Hamlin said before. Then they have to do something with the tires, whether it's put grooves on them, whether it's find something that wears off. And Goodyear, Joe's going to do the same thing that they've been doing this year. They're going to make a rock hard tire because last year their tires were blowing up, and they don't want that negative publicity again. So NASCAR is going to have to find that, or they go and say, for our short track package, we run 4 gears. That's it. That would change things because they're shifting 5 to 6 times on a half a mile track, and that changes things because there's no slipping and sliding whenever you're able to downshift, and it makes up for that driver error. But NASCAR is going to have to do something because, we already saw what the dirt crowd at Bristol looked like. You put it on asphalt with that type of racing that you saw yesterday, it'll be half of that.
All right.
And something's got to be done. The Truck Series race, I mean, it monsoon, but was a good race.
It was for the most part, which Kyle Busch would have won, by the way.
Right. And the Xfinity race was a great race. I had a blast. There were 2 dominant cars, but there was racing everywhere. And I mean everywhere. And for whatever reason, I'm sure Joe NASCAR on their broadcast was way better showing the Xfinity race than they do
They
the Cup
are.
race, because it seems like they do that every single time.
They
I have
are.
no idea why.
Well, and here's the problem, Ryan, because you just struck a nerve with me and it angers me. People actually think during the Cup Series that we want to listen to Clint Boyer, and we do not. We don't care about his analysis as NASCAR fans. We don't give a crap what he has to say. I just want to watch the race. And please, please stop just showing cars bumpers. You know, Martinsville is a perfect place to show that aerial view of cars going around the track, because it's a small track. You don't have to go that high, and you can almost give a seat view of the entire racetrack. So a fan like me can actually watch the race instead of whatever car, you know, you want to show me AJ Allmendinger's car in 27th position for 15 straight laps. Like anybody's there tuning in to watch AJ Allmendinger's driver view camera. No, I'm there to watch a race. And meanwhile, while you're showing me that, there's a race between Kyle Larson and Chase Briscoe for the lead, and there's less than a quarter of a second between them. You know he's about to be passed, and I'm riding along with AJ Allmendinger. Fox News' coverage is terrible, man. Terrible. Sorry.
That was Bobby Labonte.
Yeah.
That was Bobby Labonte in the booth. How did he do?
You know what? I don't think Clint Boyer let him talk much. I think he got out. Yeah, I agree. Well, I disagree. And then Clint Boyer be like, you know what? Why don't you shut up, Bobby? I got this from here. I'm just going to cut you off. You stand over there and you like it. I'm the star of this show. You know, I don't know. I'm so sick of Fox's coverage. They're terrible. They're terrible.
Well, Joe, when it comes to these short tracks, you know, I don't know if you have an answer. I think we all have, you know, things that we could throw at the wall and stick. If increasing horsepower is not an option due to finances, what would you like to see? Would you be willing, and do you think that, you know, fans would explode if the Cup drivers just drove the Xfinity cars for short tracks?
I'd be fine with that. I'd be fine with
too.
Bringing back the Gen 6 car, which is essentially the Xfinity car. Essentially, you know, I think the horsepower package is a little bit different. So, and I think there's some I think they got different wedges in the cars. I mean, there's a bunch of different from the Gen 6 car, but essentially what you're getting is the same quality racing, I think. If that makes sense.
Well, I mean, it seems like the Xfinity and the Truck Series more often than not has been putting on a better show. And I think one of the reasons why that is there's a huge speed differential from the guy in first and the guy in last. So you're going to find that. We knew Cole Custer was really, really fast based upon qualifying. We knew John Hunter Nemechek probably had a chance to win. But you also had people like Justin Allgaier, who was terrible. I mean, he just was absolutely terrible this past week. Granted, he said he was sick, but there's so much more variability on who's going to win more often than not, unless there's just a Ty Gibbs that ends up dominating that year. And that really hasn't been, and at least in my opinion, that's been an anomaly, as a guy dominating in Xfinity. But the cars put on better shows, and something has to get closer to that. You know, I don't know what the answer is. Maybe with the lower horsepower, they found the right downforce package. Maybe their tires go through a lot. Maybe there's just a wider range of what's really, really fast and what's not. And I know we want the 25th guy, Joe, to have a chance to win the race, but we don't give a fudge if the 25th guy wins the race. Let's just be honest.
No.
You know, at the end of the day, we're not tuning into sports to watch the lower series people win. We just simply aren't. They don't sell tickets. They don't sell merchandise. They don't move the needle, because otherwise they would be upper in a better spot anyway. I know it's a great story when Michael McDowell has a chance to win a race. You know what you did whenever he won? Nothing. You didn't buy shit. You didn't go to the next NASCAR race hoping that he won. You did nothing to invest in Michael McDowell because he ended up winning the Daytona 500. It was a cool story. You may have won a bet off of it, but you did nothing to help the sport move on from that. So unless these teams are allowed to do more when it comes to funding themselves, when it comes to moving the needle, which is what we need to have happen. I don't want the first place car being 2/10 faster than the 38th place car, because it's making for terrible racing at what used to be the most entertaining tracks.
No, I completely agree with you. There's nothing I could say to disenchant anything you're saying. And to the point of nobody gives a crap, like, you're talking about Michael McDowell. There's Corey LaJoie. There's a whole bunch of drivers like that are decent race car drivers that nobody cares if they win. And that's because NASCAR and I'm going to take this on a little side tangent right now. That's because NASCAR has become a sport of basically 3 or 4 dominating teams, and they win week in and week out. And I think we view NASCAR as being competitive between the drivers, and we kind of look at what teams are doing. But as a whole, when you look at every charter, when you look at every team in NASCAR, there's really only 3 or 4 guys in the game. And a Michael McDowell, Corey LaJoie, they might get a win here or there, but realistically, week in and week out, you're looking at the same drivers competing for a win. And until NASCAR actually does get to a point where everybody's competitive, I don't think that I don't think that you're ever going to see the lower tier drivers in NASCAR selling merchandise and having fans, because why are you going to get behind somebody that's never going to win? We're not Europeans. We're not F1 fans. We don't go out and root for the same 2 teams every week and the same 4 drivers. Right. That's not how Americans work. And until there's a 36 car field and actually 34 of those cars have a chance to actually win the race, and it is a crapshoot every week, like it is a couple of times you go to a super speedway, those drivers are never going to sell merchandise, because nobody cares. Because you might get a chance to win at Daytona, you might get a chance to win at Talladega, maybe at Darlington every once in a while, but for the most part, week in and week out, you're finishing 29th or 30th, and nobody's going to care about those drivers. And that's how it's going to be. And that's not a product of the car. That's a product of how NASCAR is structured and who has the money. And that's just how it is. The teams are going to be able to pay the best drivers. They're going to be able to put their people in the best equipment. They're going to have the best mechanics. They're going to have the best pit crew. And Rick Ware is going to be sitting at the end of the pit road every week going, shit, I wish I could afford that. So it doesn't have anything to do with the car. I think the next gen car has made an improvement, like we opened up this show with, to road courses, to 1.5 miles. I don't think you could do really anything to fix a super speedway. That's a beast in and of itself. But NASCAR shouldn't have touted that we have a 1 car fix all system, because you don't. Because you are absolutely right, Ryan. Just like you said, they have killed and are killing short track racing, which pains my heart, to be honest.
No, and you nailed it when you said this is more grassroots. Short track is grassroots. I mean, every single thing. Nobody has the money to do a 1.5 mile, modified track. They just don't. It's got to be a NASCAR track, or it's to be over 1 mile. And to ruin this product. And another thing too, Joe, like, you're right, there are 3 or 4 teams that are going to be competitive. But what NASCAR has done now is, if one team has this much of an advantage, the other team, like Formula One, has to wait till the next year to figure out how to do something to get better, because they're not allowed to make these modifications that we've seen. Even Hendrick, maybe Hendrick has done enough to get away with whatever they've done, and that's why they're dominant. But they're flying they're on that gray line. They've been busted twice, to try to get that. And I'm not saying that there's nothing they've been doing that in NASCAR since the beginning of time. So if you're worried about somebody cheating, yes, it's great to say, and it fills up message boards, and F Kyle Larson, he's a cheater. I remember walking out and I'll say, after Kyle Larson won, I said, well, I'll just wait till R&D and make sure he actually won, because that's fun to say.
Right.
Every team does it. Every team did it. And at the end of the day, the ingenuity with these teams are what created the parity in this sport, Joe, that's now been taken away. So unless you like to see a guy that has that much of an advantage win all the time, you better hope it's your team, and this year it's Hendrick, because right now the ingenuity's gone.
Right.
to try to be another team that ends up being fast. And we know that Richard Childress Racing right now, at least from a Kyle Busch standpoint, their short track package is
No,
effing terrible.
it's terrible, man.
Effing terrible.
That's terrible.
I mean,
you have
terrible.
You have probably at the end at the when it's all said and done with, you probably have the best driver of all time. I mean, I'm not a huge Kyle Busch fan, but I'm okay with saying that. And if you can't give that man a car to run at Martinsville to finish on the lead lap, that is terrible. That's an injustice in and of itself. And how RCR cannot figure out how to get a car right on a short track. You know, every other team's doing it. The other Chevrolet team's doing it. Hendrick's doing it. Why can't you do it? What are you doing wrong that you can't give a competitive car on a short track? They've been okay on mile and a halves. They were okay on the road course, I think. Or am I going?
Yeah, they're solid. Yeah, I mean, Tyler Reddick was good. Kyle Busch ended up getting like he got second place. He didn't have a car to win it at COTA, but he got second place.
So,
but you know,
and that's because
Joe, it's getting back to, like you said, Formula One. We knew going into this track that for whatever reason, Stewart Haas Racing was really fast this week.
Yeah, right.
Well, guess what? In Formula One, you typically, there might be a team that surprises you at a certain track, but guess what? That'll be the only track. And this might be the only track that
usually only one other team too in F1, which is Mercedes. You know, so you know, but yeah, I mean, getting back to that, I want to get this quick little point in. That's kind of funny that Ryan Preece wins the pole and Kyle Larson comes from like 16th or to win the race after last week. So Ryan Preece.
That is pretty. You were semi upset watching him lead 100+ laps.
Oh man, I was pissed.
And then he shoots himself in the foot and cannot get through traffic. And
it was great.
I don't know. This was my mood walking out, and this is an honest to God truth, where we parked in a lady's yard. Standing in the driveway was Jeff Burton and Bill Elliott. Honest to God. And I walked by and I said, "Hey guys," and I just kept walking. More often than not, I would ask to get a picture. I was so pissed that Kyle Busch was that terrible and that I was present to watch that god-awful race. And I was just like, I don't even want a picture with Bill Elliott.
Yeah. Screw that guy.
So upset. I was so upset.
Hey, that brings us
but I will say this.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, you know, the guys that I went with were Chase Elliott fans, and they're like, yeah, Chase did pretty good. You know, he ended up getting 10th out of nowhere. And but it's good to see Hendrick win. And Bill Elliott goes, I can't stand to see Kyle Larson win.
Seriously?
Swear to God. Yeah. That's what he told one of the guys I was with. And I think, Joe, because there's such a competitiveness inside of Hendrick Racing, that whenever Kyle Larson wins, Joe, that means Chase Elliott probably had just as good of a car and didn't. And I think maybe that's probably why that is.
Well,
or Kyle Larson also, you know, cost Chase Elliott possibly 2 wins last year. That could be something too.
You know, I will say this. I think old Daddy Bill needs to give Chase a pass on this one, because I you know, for a top 10 finish, first race back, I mean, that, you know, and especially that race, which is probably a little bit, I mean, don't get me wrong. Every time these guys step into a car, it's physically demanding. For those naysayers that say this isn't a sport, you're completely wrong. As far as physical conditioning and eye-hand coordination. So, you know, I'll throw that out there. But for him to get a top 10 finish at this track after kind of an abysmal, not kind of, it was a terrible qualifying session, go out, ran his race, you know, first race back. I think he did a great job. So, you know, I think.
And he was exhausted.
Yeah, I think he'll be right back up front. I think he'll be up front next week and in the weeks to come. So I'm not, I'm still on 100% on board with that. Chase Elliott's probably going to come out of this season with two wins, and he's going to get into the playoffs. Actually, I think, well, and those are, you know, see, I'm all off tonight. Those rules don't even matter because he's almost into the top 30 anyway, but those rules don't even matter because one, they don't matter this year, and two, I think there's still going to be 16 different winners. So
Yeah. Well, I remember one of our previous shows we were talking, and I was kind of telling you that I thought Kyle Larson was the best driver in the sport right now, at least speed wise. I said, because we did a power rankings is what we did, and I said I think Kyle Larson's number one, and comes out of nowhere. His crew chief makes a really, really good call and ends up getting this win. And we've talked about this long enough. Now we'll actually look at the results. And Joe, let me know when you can see that.
I can see it.
Okay. So there you have it. Kyle Larson up front. Joey Logano started in last place, was absolutely terrible the entire race. Got lapped a couple times, was able to get the lucky dog both times, and ends up passing everybody but the last car due to great pit strategy. Again, a lot of times when it comes to getting a top 10, when you don't have it, it's up to your crew chief to make the difference. And you can see it right here. These top 3 drivers were all in. Kyle Larson was middling. I will say that. He was the best out of these drivers, but Joey Logano way in the back. Martin Truex got lapped one time after having an issue on pit road. Denny Hamlin was solid. I thought at one point we thought he had maybe the best car. It ends up not being the best car. Chase Briscoe, I think not a lot of people have been surprised if he ended up winning. Eric Almirola was fast all day. Ryan Blaney had to battle through some adversity. He probably passed the most cars on the green flag actual racing. I think he gained like 16 spots at one point. One of the only cars I was able to pass. Ricky Stenhouse, he was my stock up guy after what he did at Bristol, and somehow out of the middle of nowhere comes away with another top 10. So, I mean, you got to give it up to the one-man team there with Ricky Stenhouse getting another top 10. I think he's really surprising a lot of people. I think a lot of us, including myself, after the Daytona 500 win, go, well, they'll mail it in for about a 28th place season point finish and get, knocked out in the first round of the playoffs. But they've been doing all right.
Yeah.
Bubba Wallace, I want to talk to you about this, Joe. And obviously we talked about Chase Elliott. Everybody else, kind of the same. Austin Dillon, good pit strategy. Otherwise, he was terrible the rest of the day. Ryan Preece shot himself in the foot. By far had the fastest car. These guys right here, Christopher Bell was nowhere to be found. Kevin Harvick probably should have won if they don't put a freaking flat tire on his car. How the hell does that happen? Just on the last pit stop. Outside of that,
I don't. Did you watch the replay on that? Because what that looked like to me is the entire wheel broke.
I heard that the wheel was loose, but the tire was flat regardless.
Okay, I didn't. So I didn't see that.
Happened.
I just know, I just know in the brief seconds that Fox showed that there was a problem, that the entire wheel was broken all the way around the inside. So that could have been a product.
So kind of like an Almirola situation.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's weird because that means that's 2 Stewart Haas racing cars that have only had that problem.
Well,
but
maybe
I was gonna. Go ahead.
No, I mean my thought on that though is, if the tire's not going on there straight, that could be an issue. So yeah, if it's not sitting flush with the rotor, I think that could be causing it. But I don't know. I mean, who knows?
Yeah, it's weird, Joe. After Kevin Harvick really had a hard time finding a way to get wins, seems like he's having a very easy time finding a way to screw up wins. Him and his team, twice I believe has cost him 2 wins because I thought he was a really, really good car, really good chance to win this thing. And another issue. But what I wanted to talk to you about, I don't know how much Fox showed this, but Denny Hamlin was trying to get the lead early in that run when I was talking to you. I think he was in second place. Bubba Wallace is in front of him. He's lap traffic. He will not get out of the way.
Yeah.
So Denny Hamlin finally gives him the chrome horn after about, 6 laps. It was at least 6 laps. And then Bubba Wallace, for whatever reason, decides to give him back the chrome horn after being a lap down.
Yeah.
And it's his boss. I mean, how crazy was that?
Yeah, no, I was kind of in disbelief. They did show, I think Fox showed that in the replay, actually, because why would they show that? Why would they show that live? You know, we were probably in JJ Yaley's helmet cam at that point. I don't know. So, you know, I did see that, and really, I don't know. I don't know if that was a message to him, like, I'm going to do everything I can to come out here and win races for myself and this race team, and I don't care if it's my boss behind me. I don't know if he was trying to show him that, or it was just him being Bubba Wallace. Because typically, you know, I know cars do everything they can to do to, or they do everything they can to stay on the lead lap. But I will say this, if I remember right, wasn't that toward the end of that was toward the end of a stage. There was maybe 6 laps left to go, and most probably Denny Hamlin probably wasn't going to pass another car within them 6 laps, and Bubba Wallace would have got the wave around anyway, and I think he did, as a matter of fact, at the end of stage 2 there. I don't know that, you know, he not only did he risk his car, because they did some pretty heavy racing at the end of that stage, just for Bubba Wallace not to be lapped. You know, and really had the potential to either, you know, put himself out of the race or Denny Hamlin out of the race. And either way, I don't think that would have went well for either one of them. That would have been a long conversation at the end of the race. And I'm sure they probably had one anyway.
Eric Almirola was on the radio and goes, "This is awesome. It'd be awesome to see these 2 idiots wreck each other." He said on the radio. And I said that whenever I was sitting with my friend Cody at the time. I was like, man, that'd be great for our show if you saw these 2 guys
That would be
each
awesome.
other in the middle of the race. But one other thing I want to get to, and this is probably the most asinine and dangerous thing I've ever seen in racing, is NASCAR let a tire come off of a car and sit on the front stretch right where cars were coming off of turn 4 for at the minimum of 4 laps.
Well, and so you go ahead. Yeah, no,
on the front stretch.
Yeah, no, and you texted me because you're there and I'm watching the race, and you text me something to the effect of, there's been a tire sitting here for 4 laps on the front stretch, no caution. And then finally, so Fox coverage shows the tire, right? And the crow's nest, the flagman's looking right at the tire. For at least 2 more laps before the caution comes out. And it's like, and then I don't know who said it in the broadcast. They said, well, NASCAR couldn't see it because it was up against the wall. And it's like, the flagman's right there. They're well aware that tire's sitting there. So
there's a reason why the flag stand is actually over the track and not behind the track.
Could you imagine if somebody came around that turn and you know, the inertia kept them up against the wall and somebody punted that tire over the catch fence into the crowd? That could have been terrible.
It could have, absolutely. And that is the reason why NASCAR had such a very, very harsh penalty for these tires coming off. And another asinine thing is to think about this, Joe. Anthony Alfredo goes into the pit stall with 3 tires, and not one person in NASCAR goes, wonder where the hell that tire went that guy was driving around with.
Yeah.
I mean, what fucking idiots.
Yeah, there's no infield.
Right there.
There's no infield. Martinsville it's all concrete and asphalt.
It's all concrete.
There's nowhere for the tire to go that's not on a racing surface.
Yeah. And you're right. And that's the first thing that I told the person I was sitting with. I said, if that thing would have been hit, it would have went straight up. And God knows what happens from there. Because we've had patrons been killed by a tire before.
Right.
And that's the reason why NASCAR made that rule so strong, that if a tire comes off in the middle of the track, they had very, very harsh penalties. But lo and behold, we get caution flags for guys halfway turning around and then correcting themselves. But a tire at the shortest track on the front stretch sits there against the wall for 4 laps. In the whole entire turn where I'm sitting, because I was in turn 4, if you watch the video I posted today, right in front of it, here we go. It's like Final Destination 4. Flag. And the flagman goes, those jackasses are doing the wave in turn 4. Fucking idiots.
Yeah, Clint Boyer's up in the booth going, I think they're waving at me.
Yeah. The telling me he's number 1 in the booth. Yeah. It just, like you said, Joe. And the thing for Clint Boyer to then go and CYA NASCAR. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. Yeah.
On the shortest track, it's Talladega or a road course, Joe. We're nice enough to give the benefit of the doubt. There's things that could happen and 2.5 miles that God knows what could happen. There you can't have. You want to have eyes everywhere, but you may miss something. You may miss a little piece of debris this way. A tire goes down. That guy's pissed. But the shortest track, all
Well,
concrete
you
with
can.
a guy staring. Because
It's
they have two officials.
It's
One's looking at 1 and 2, the other's one's looking at 3 and
it's
4.
inexcusable. NASCAR monitors every channel, and I'm sure every driver was driving around going, "There's a tire there. There's a tire there. There's a tire there." You think somebody for NASCAR would go, "Huh? I bet there's a tire out there somewhere." So yeah, it's just terrible. And you're absolutely right. We have seen kind of cautions thrown that have been very suspicious, to say the least, toward the end of races, to give somebody maybe a competitive advantage. Not saying it's fixed. I'm not saying that. But to let
Wonderful green white checker.
yeah, wonderful green white checkered. But which, by the way, I was absolutely surprised that didn't happen. And I could actually say probably if Corey LaJoy or somebody of that nature was winning this race, we probably would have had a green white checkered finish. I'm a Kyle Larson fan, so but 15 laps, I'm going. I fully expected a caution with 3 laps to go to get that green white checkered, but with the cautions that we've seen thrown, to have a tire sitting on, and I think it was about 6 laps, Ryan. I could be wrong, because
I'm being generous. I thought it was at the bare minimum 4.
Because you texted me and then I saw it. Of course, I'm sure I was a little delayed watching on TV than where you were from, but or what you were watching. But still, I mean, it seemed like, because they were showing it and they're still, they showed 2 laps when the Fox broadcast picked it up.
Yeah.
So that's kind of inexcusable. Very, very dangerous situation. And NASCAR wants to tout themselves as being safe, and I think for the most part they are, but that was crazy to me.
Yeah. Well, to close things up, Joe, I think at the end of the day, we really had high expectations that whatever this new aero package is would fix Martinsville, because there's a lot of people. There's a reason why Martinsville is the last race before the championship.
Right.
Is because we have very high expectations for it. We have very high expectations for Bristol. And unfortunately, maybe the dirt race is going to be the only Bristol race worth a dang this year. And there's a lot of people that hate that. But I'll tell you what they'll hate more is just watching cars centipede around the entire time. And NASCAR is going to have to do something. And I applaud them for at least trying to do something this year when it comes to the package, the aero package that they rolled out this year. But something else has to be done, because if you lose what essentially is your sport, whether it be short track dirt racing or short track asphalt racing, man, you're going to have a really, really hard time getting people to come to any track.
No,
I mean,
agree.
yeah, people are going to come to Daytona. People are going to come to Talladega. But if you can't get people to come to Martinsville and Bristol, you're going to have a hell of a time getting people to come to Kansas City.
Right.
You're going to have a hell of a time getting people to go to Las Vegas. And it's just going to, build upon itself from there. And, the fans deserve to watch good racing at these tracks. I mean, this track is literally in the middle of a town. In the middle of a town. And that's what makes it awesome. That it is just so old school. It was so awesome to be there. And again, I had a good time. But we got to do something to get Martinsville and Bristol back to the Martinsville and Bristol that we know and love, because that is the grassroots of NASCAR, and we're losing it right before our eyes.
Yeah, I again, I can't disagree with you. And at the end of the day, NASCAR, you got to be able to you got to be able to figure it out on short tracks. You watch a Whelen Modified, it's good racing. I mean, hell, you watch SRX here in a couple weeks, it's good short track racing. And you're telling me NASCAR can't figure it out? It's ridiculous. You're killing the sport.
You're exactly right. The best race last year, Joe, in my opinion, out of all the races, was the Lucas Oil. It used to be Lucas Oil Raceway truck race last year. Was amazing. on that track. That
Mhm.
old school, I think it's just over half a mile, 6/10 of a mile there, just south of Indianapolis. Amazing race. There's no reason the truck should be putting on that good of a
Right.
race. And what the guys come to see,
Right.
trash.
ARCA puts on good short track racing when they're at short tracks. ARCA does, Wheel and Modified does, trucks do, Xfinity does, SRX does. Why is the NASCAR Cup Series the only series in auto racing that can't figure out how to put on good short track racing? That seems kind of
Because
asinine.
they're moving further and further away from exactly those products that you're talking about by adding sequential shifting, by adding bigger brakes, by adding wider tires. Not everything new is good. There's some things that need to transform when it comes to safety and that thing. But at the end of the day, if the old adage goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And
Right.
unfortunately, NASCAR has tried to fix something when it comes to short tracks that was no way, shape, or form anywhere close to even cracking. And they threw the entire thing out the window. And unfortunately, us fans are the ones paying for
Right.
it.
Unfortunately, NASCAR's motto is if it ain't broke, fix it till it is.
Sometimes it makes you wonder. So, do we have any other comments or questions there at Command Center 1?
No, not really. Not any worth going through. I'll say that.
Okay. I will say this. Tune in if you're still here with us. Tune in on Wednesday. I will be announcing a giveaway for whenever we reach our 500 subscribers. I'll tell you how to get into that giveaway. I know that's news to you, Joe, but I
Mhm.
will tell you what it will take to get to that. Again, that will be a giveaway announced for the weekly show.
We're also on TikTok now.
We are on the communist TikTok. So if you would,
On the TikTok.
when you're not watching, God knows what you're watching on TikTok, you can catch a race wreck
Right.
or
Yeah.
somebody get punched in the face.
In between your viewing of things of ill repute, you could catch a truck wreck. Of course, Ryan and I don't know how to use the TikTok yet, but we're getting there.
Yeah. Yeah. I do not. I don't plan to. I know this is not great, like publishing to promoting this. Um, just never had any reason to get on the old TikTok. It'll be pretty bad. A 20-car pileup might be a palate cleanser off the old TikTok.
Yeah.
So,
Well, you're a good God-fearing man, Ryan Peters, and I understand why you're not on the TikTok. Because some
well,
things on there, there's just no coming back from.
let Stuck in the Catch Fence be a light in the darkness. That is the content on TikTok. So, Joe, you have anything else before we sign off?
No, I don't. Good show.
We will be back on Wednesday or Thursday for our traditional weekly show. We'll be back to a normal schedule as Easter's now done. I'm back home from Martinsville, so we'll be doing some gambling shows and doing things of that nature. I know we're a few weeks out from the Indy 500, which I've been dragged into, I guess, for that. So that's unfortunate. And we'll be talking probably some more dirt track racing. The World of Outlaws will be coming to us here soon, and they've been putting on some good races as well. So we'll dive into a little bit of that stuff as well. But make sure you stay with us. We love it if you would like and subscribe to the channel. We're always looking to grow, and the only way that other people are able to see this is if you do those two little things: tickling the subscribe button and the like button, and that'll help us out as well. That's the only thing we ask. It's just two little clicks.
You got
It's harder to swipe to watch your half-naked man, dance in front of a Bud Light bottle or whatever you're watching on TikTok. That
Yeah.
requires more energy
it does.
to do that than it is to tickle the subscribe button. Just being honest.
You're okay. We'll go with tickle the subscribe button. I hear the young folk these days, Ryan, are saying smash that subscribe button.
Yeah, the only thing the young folks are doing are smashing vape pens. Come on.
Smashing vape pens and watching the TikTok.
Yeah. Those Zoomers and their douche flutes.
Yeah.
Let's get out of here. It's been a great show. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back. This has been Stuck in the Catch Fence.